by and large, most people are anaesthetised to the sheer improbability of the rise of Rome. This is a load of cattle rustlers camped out on hills amid marshes. And yet somehow these people, first of all, fashion a city and then fashion an empire that swallows up much of the known world. They were able to cast themselves as being distinctive in a way that perhaps objectively they weren't. And yet clearly there was something about their organisation that did make them kind of uniquely lethal, uniquely able to conquer and to annex. And so the question is really, how did they do it? And that again was a question that I very much set myself to try and answer in Rubicon. The book is named Rubicon. Caesar famously crosses the Rubicon, and so Julius Caesar, of course, is a central figure within it. And Caesar is probably the figure that most people who know nothing about Rome do know about. And I think that he is conventionally regarded as the archetype of a great man, a great conqueror, a great writer, the man who reorganises the calendar. And yet, the process of writing Rubicon made me like him less and less. I think he effectively is the man who destroys the Republican system. And part of the fascination of contemplating Caesar's life, not on its own, but as part of the fabric of the civilization, the political system, the social order that generates him, is to see in which he is simultaneously very much a product of it, and yet also a kind of terrifyingly mutant figure. I think for anyone who grows up on Asterix, as I did, that was my first taste of love for the Romans, you tend to think of the Gallic Wars in kind of cartoon characters. Nobody in Asterix ever dies. It's always, the Roman soldiers of the Gauls end up with stars flying around their head and they're hanging over the branches of trees. But to contemplate actually the scale of what the conquest of Gaul meant is kind of overwhelming. It's evident that there was warfare on a near genocidal scale, and this was weaponized by Caesar for his own aims. This was exactly the kind of the tales of endurance and bloodshed that, written up in the spare prose of his commentaries and sent back to Rome, did so much to inflate his reputation. Whether it's fake news or not, it's certainly news that has served to cast Caesar in a golden heroic light for 2,000 years, and in a way that I think is not entirely justified. I wanted to give a portrait not just of the events that led to the downfall of the Republic, but to give a portrait of the Republic itself and the entire world in which the Republic was the greatest player. So the great challenge for me when I began work on this, well, I was not an academic, so I didn't have access to an academic library. But then I discovered that here I could get a reader's ticket. And I remember the sense of excitement of coming here, of thinking, what Aladdin's cave waits for me beyond these barriers. And as it turned out, the riches on offer exceeded my wildest hopes. That was what then led me on a great voyage of exploration towards all the many other shelves similarly freighted with goodies. As I was writing Rubicon, this narrative history about an imperial republic, a superpower that expands its influence into the Middle East, toppling tyrants, chasing terrorists. So very similar events were happening in the real world. 9/11 happened while I was writing Rubicon. The invasion of Afghanistan, the build-up to the Iraq War was a backdrop to it. The stamp of the politics of the age in which I was writing it is absolutely there. I hope that doesn't detract from its quality as a work of history, but I do think that it suggests that the fall of the Roman Republic does hold a kind of mirror up to the present, and the reflections that we tend to see are those of our own age. And in a sense, that is the foundational justification for writing it. That's why it's called Rubicon. Rubicon is the boundary line. It's the border that Caesar crosses. But that border is also the border between republic and autocracy, between, depending on your perspective, between order and chaos, or between tyranny and liberty. And those are timeless themes. And that's why A History of the Roman Republic is also about how the West understands its own politics.